Welcome, freeloaders, geeks, and nerds, to my iceberg lair. I am Dr. NeoKesha, star of the Crash Bandicoot video game franchise. Join me as we play excerpts from the latest installment, Crash Bandicoot Unlimited! First, a word from our sponsors. Mr.Bones.
Crash Bandicoot. One of my all-time favorite franchises. Something I love about Crash is how creative the Bandicoot got in his first few adventures of post-Naughty Dog games. Okay, excluding these two dumpster fires. Specifically his first real creative adventure. Not counting Wrath of Cortex, as I feel like he was playing it a bit safe there. No, of course, I'm referring to the wacky, buggy, hilarious title known as Crash Twinsanity. The first and only title developed by Traveller's Tales Oxford, a division that was dedicated to making Crash Bandicoot games. Ironically, this was only one of the two games that they ever developed, the other being Super Monkey Ball apparently. It formed in early 2002. Having never made a game before, the Oxford team was given the mighty task to develop the next mainline Crash game after the commercial flop that was Wrath of Cortex. Of course, a lot of pressure was put on the team, and not only was Traveller's Tales giving them a tall order by developing a Crash game, but having to live up to the past three Naughty Dog games, which are gems in and of themselves, on top of the fact that they needed to have it complete by holiday of 2004. Sheesh. Despite the pressure, the young studio was still excited nonetheless. Having that creative spark in them, they wanted to create the best Crash Bandicoot game the world has ever seen. Of course, that didn't happen. Yeah. In all honesty, I feel like Crash Twinsanity had the potential to be the best Crash title by a landslide. Unfortunately, due to heavy time constraints and internal bickering, the game was heavily cut down and almost the entire game was tossed to the cutting room floor. And that, my friends, is what we'll be discussing today. All of the interesting, ambiguous, ambitious, strange, and bizarre ideas from Twinsanity that never saw the light of day. A lot of which sucks to see that was never fully realized. Needless to say, discussing all of the cut content from this game is a tall order. Really, I could spend all of my time discussing the origins of this game and the development hell it and the team went through, though I feel like there are like a million other better videos on YouTube discussing that exact thing already, so I won't really dive deeper into the origins more so than what I've already discussed previously in the beginning of the video. Well, there are a few things I would like to talk about that are post-Twinsanity related, but we'll get into those soon enough. With that said though, sit back, relax, and enjoy yourself as I take you through the long, deep rabbit hole, as long as Cortex's head's big, as we dive into the cut content of Crash Bandicoot Twinsanity.
From humble beginnings.
So, from what I've researched, it seems before Twinsanity was going to be all about its humorous writing, they wanted to make a more edgier take on the marsupial, which, to this day, I still think is a terrible idea, in all honesty. I mean, like, yeah, Crash was portrayed as a really cool and hip in the advertising materials, but when you actually play the games, you come to realize that Crash really embraces his Looney Tune roots that he was inspired by originally, having wacky expressions, wackier death animations, and not to mention the Crash dance. That never gets old. But I'm getting off topic here. Point is, Oxford wanted to make a Crash title for a more older and hormonally charged crowd. With that in mind, they conjured up the idea of Crash Bandicoot Evolution, a much more epic Crash game, heavily focusing on a story rather than mindless platforming. Some ideas were thrown around, such as making the game more of an RPG or a real-time strategy game. Ugh. As far as the story goes, well, that's kind of what killed this original vision, according to one of Crash Evolution's developers, Paul Gardner.
Evolution began with Crash's island being stolen from the Earth by the evil twins and used as a jigsaw piece in one giant planet made from pieces of others. But when Ratchet & Clank was released, Insomniac had the same idea. Their planet looked identical to ours, so we decided to start over.
As Paul stated, they ended up canning the concept after finding out Insomniac was doing a very similar thing with Ratchet & Clank. It was then that they decided to make the game in more of a funnier approach, still leaning towards a story, but having a more comedic side of dialogue in mind. The title will be known as Crash Unlimited, which in all honesty sounds like Crash's version of Sonic Team. Ugh, it's so corporate sounding. It's almost as if you can hear the trademark. Needless to say, this was not a very good title, and the team knew this. Many people know this already. Oh my god! Ginger Step, shut up! Many people know this already, especially if you are a huge Crash buff such as myself, but even the title of the game, Twinsanity, was a last-minute name given to the game after Vivendi only gave the team 1 hour to finalize it. If they couldn't develop a proper name for the game, then Vivendi would simply keep it as Crash Unlimited. The team obviously panicked and came up with a few ideas, one of which was Crash Twinsane, though it doesn't really roll off the tongue as much. It wasn't until Keith Webb moment when he came up with Twinsanity. Only 5 minutes left to spare. But back to Evolution. During my dive into Evolution's development, I couldn't really find much. That was until I discovered Keith Webb moment. Twitter page, ironically. It would seem that Keith kept a lot of his old Oxford documents and concepts with him throughout the years, and he would eventually share them with the world, some of which were storyboards for Crash Bandicoot Evolution's intro. And while I could share all of them with you, I'm just gonna show off the ones that stuck out the most to me particularly. If you're still interested in this, I'm gonna link Keith Webb moment Twitter down below for you to take a look for yourself. They're a sight to behold for any Crash fan. Speaking of Keith Webb, really most of the concept art in this video is going to consist of his illustrations, as most of the ideas and concepts were mainly done through his concept art and sketches, which isn't a bad thing at all. I mean, he has one of the most unique and creative art styles, and it fits the bizarre tone Twinsanity is just drenched with. So let's go ahead and take a look at the ones that stand out the most. Twinsanity also has a lot of unused in-game animations for all of the characters, including Crash, Cortex, Nina, and even Coco. Yeah, Coco was planned to be a playable character, which I guess that makes the box art make a little bit more sense. I mean, I don't think they were referring to Mecha Bandicoot at the end of the game. That was literally a one-off gag, but I'll get back to Coco at a later time. I found a whole treasure trove of unused enemy animations off of JMac, one of the developers of Crash Twinsanity's YouTube channel. So why don't we dive into them, shall we? Of course, seeing as how Crash Twinsanity was all about its writing, it's no surprise that there were a lot of scrapped cutscenes and storyboards that were made, but sadly never made it in, all complete with voice acting by Lex Lane and gang. Let's go ahead and dive into some of these fantastic cutscenes, all of which are around 30 to 50 seconds long, so I'll go ahead and play all of them, or at least the ones I could get my scrawny, pasty hands on.
Nina, you scared me! Come here. Forget it.
Ain't that sweet? It's a real man who ain't afraid to show his feelings, and my mom says real men prefer their cocoa hot and bitter.
I'm not thirsty. Let's go.
You monster! Let my brother go!
My crystals! Interesting. The malfunction has opened a portal into her brainovial hyperbarium, the well from which her personality springs like sugar water. What pastel-colored horrors await in there? I wonder. Coco, my dear, I can't bear to see you like this. Better. To confibulate the psychotron, these 6 disjunctional globiforms must be interphasified with the positron receptors before the quantum dilation stage kilometizes. Push the balls into the holes as quickly as possible. I thought it best if I came in disguise. We don't want to attract the wrong kind of attention.
Now that's my kind of woman. Ahoy, my golden siren of the deep. I shall shower you with pearls and make you my sea bride. Dr. Cortex? How confusing.
The Aku Uka brothers together again.
We did it! Forget it. Let's go. Lousy, stinking bandicoot. Pull the lever, Cortex. Push the button, Cortex. Throw the switch, Cortex. I have a heart condition. Did Frankenstein throw his own switches? Did Jekyll push his own buttons? Oh, I'll do it. Pathetic loser.
Our magic is no match for the twins' power.
What we need is a little brute force. Mecha Bandicoot is equipped with an electronic brain, programmed with Crash's own cerebral patterns.
Are you sure that was wise?
Let's bring him home. Engage autopilot! What's the worst that can happen? We must be careful. The dimensions coexist in fragile equilibrium. Any contact with our alter egos in this reality could prove disastrous. Welcome to the 10th. Forget I said anything. Your fur is so soft and warm. Something's wrong. Something's changed. A malfunction. Our personality switched. If you're evil, I must be... A pain in my chest. I feel nice. And I can't stand it. Help me! Nina, I'm so proud of you. No! Dendrobium thyssiflorum, prettiest of all orchids. Ooh, Mr. Tiddles, why could drink of milk? Make it stop! You imbecile! What do you... Of course, prepare the rehab lab. Please.
I think all of these ideas and snippets are very interesting. There's so many ideas and jokes that would have simply been fantastic to see fully rendered and realized. Of course, a lot of these are just simply early plot concepts, such as Crash and Cortex being turned into evil and good versions of each other, which eventually was rewritten in the final game. I always wondered where the good Cortex was when I first played this, but as it turns out, there was gonna be a parents from the good doctor. And a funny one, I might add too. Too bad it was never finished. This was probably the biggest pain to research, mainly due to the fact that this part of development is mostly unknown. So, Crash Twinsanity had a ton of cut levels from the game. Well, no right? People know this already. Well, what people don't know is how many levels were actually cut. Some of these levels range from merely mentioned once or twice by a dev, to having half to almost the entirety of the level completely built, just didn't have enough time to make it to the retail release. And I think the best example of this is the infamously known Gone a Bit Coco. I think anyone who's played Twinsanity knows about this iconic piece of Crash history. Gone a Bit Coco was a bonus act after you'd finished taking down Embryo and Entropy. Once you'd head back to Cortex's iceberg lair, you'd find Coco there ready to get revenge on the Doctor after he zapped her in the opening cutscene. She kicks the crystal out of his hands, knocks them right into the Psychotron, which ironically ends up zapping her in the head once again, freezing her back in place. While this may be what happens in the final game, in the original vision, a portal would open up through Coco's
Brainovial hyperbarium.
and Cortex would go in, having to take down Swedish sugar teddy bears and gumdrop elephants inside of this Candyland-riddled hellscape, as shown in the earlier Unused Animations segment. It was never really explained why Cortex goes into Coco's head in the first place, but according to Paul Gardner, it would appear that Coco had some sort of information that only she knew that Cortex needed in order to get progress. Nina would eventually go back into Coco's mind to fix the damage Cortex caused. The only known proof that Gone a Bit Coco was complete was some early press release footage showing the level and Cortex in action. Take a look. Of course, this only shows the skybox and a few set pieces, while Cortex just stands in place shooting frantically. It's still really cool to see the level did get pretty far into production. Many people have wondered if a playable build of Twinsanity with Gone a Bit Coco exists. Well, we're not too sure about that. Here's what Paul, going by the alias of Fake Nina at the time, said about the possibility of Gone a Bit Coco still being out there. Hey guys, Editor Bones here. I know this is inconvenient. I'm so good at video editing, right, and writing scripts. Well, my dumbass forgot to get some context when I was writing the script as to what this message is and where this quote even came from, so allow my editor prowess to enlighten you all. So the quote that you're about to listen to is actually from Fake Nina, or better known as Paul Gardner. The quote in question is actually a response from an email that someone sent him, NeoKesha specifically, who asked him about Gone a Bit Coco and the Frankenstein enemies from the Cortex version of Classroom Chaos. That's really all that you need to know for what this message is and where it came from in the first place. I just feel like it'd be a bit jarring to read it and then have no understanding of where it even came from. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Back to the video, I guess. Whee!
Hey NeoKesha, thank you for your message. I think your project is amazing. I'm so happy and honoured that people are still exploring and finding things in Twinsanity. Your project is kinda like archaeology. There must be all kinds of things hidden away on the disc. I can't imagine. It would be great if we still had all the assets from the game. But of course we were making Twinsanity for Vivendi, and turned over the hard drives to them when the game was done. I'm sure some of the team had bits and pieces that they were allowed to keep for their portfolio. I did reply to a message from Tem about Gone a Bit Coco. I thought perhaps that one of the level artists might still have some Maya files from his portfolio, but I've not yet been able to get in contact with him. So yes, it is true that Tamasan wrote to me. I think the Freudenstein appears in the classroom during Classroom Chaos, but was meant to appear in the corridors too at one time. There were also children made for the school that looked more human, like Nina, but we had to take them out because Claudette could shoot them. Anyway, thanks for writing. I'll watch the project with interest. Please don't feel hesitated to write to me again if you've got any more questions or need anything. If I can't answer a question, I can find somebody who can. Best regards, FN.
But enough about Coco, let's discuss some scrap segments in the levels, such as Bug Run, a secret route that you would take during Jungle Bungle. It was a level where you'd get chased by hundreds of tiny bugs as you would romp through a long obstacle course. I believe the reward at making it to the end was a gem, though that's simply speculation on my end. There were also plans to have a second island to explore, mainly as Nina, where you would race the Komodo Bros for a power crystal as mentioned before. The Rehab Lab was another level, and it was similar to Doc Amok, where you would play as evil Crash, back when Crash and Cortex returned into the opposite of their respective selves. You would have to humiliate the good Cortex as he would return to normal. Of course, that was later scrapped, as the story implies that evil Crash and good Cortex are in fact separate characters entirely. Even though good Cortex wasn't even in the final retail release of the game, whatever. Not to mention the previously discussed Koala Kong train level, a Scrap the Lava level, and an extension of Injin's battleship. The list goes on. But while I could sit here and tell you more about these cut levels, I really suggest you take a look at Beyond Twinsanity. This site is where I got most of my information for all of this stuff, so I suggest you take a look at it if you're still interested and you want to learn more about it. So let's go ahead and continue on, I guess. Let's move on to some sounds. Here's an unused Universal Interactive plug. It might have played at the beginning of the intro.
Universal Interactive, sponsors of evil science.
The next one is Cortex saying Naughty Dog, which is a cheeky reference to the original developers of the first 3 Crash games.
Naughty Dog! Naughty Dog!
Here's a sound that Cortex doesn't make in the final game. Here's a clip of Cortex giving the player a hint on how to defeat the Mecha Bandicoot, even though it's kinda obvious at the beginning of the game.
Now be careful not to let him spin back the green plasma blast. 3-fold hits and we're done for. If only he knew.
Cortex had a bunch of unused lines and sounds, specifically sentences that were just never used in the final game. Here's a big collage of all of them.
Spin me if you like, but I'll never give up my crystal! Meet me on level B. I have something to show you. Surprised to see me, Crash? The doors! Close them! Quickly!
Since we're on the topic of lines and sound effects, let's talk about tracks themselves. So you remember that level in Twinsanity where you have to climb up to the iceberg layer? Well, as it turns out, there was going to be a dedicated track for it. It was called Ice Climb. Here's a sample of it. There's also an unused version of Boiler Room of Doom, which for the longest time I thought was actually supposed to be the track for Gone a Bit Coco. I guess this was a mistake. Even as the writing and recording of this video, I still find it hard to believe that this was from Boiler Room of Doom. It just sounds like Gone a Bit Coco. Take a listen. Aha, another quirky editor moment here. I forgot to add this one. This one's an unused track for Classroom Chaos, Crash's version at least. Take a listen for yourself. I honestly prefer it over what we got originally. As it would turn out, Jon Burton, one of the developers over at Traveler's Tales, kept a crap ton of prototype discs and builds on discs over the years and has made a ton of videos covering them on a channel called Game Hut. A lot of those videos covered none other than Crash Twinsanity, and as it turns out, he's kept a ton of prototype discs from even the early days of Crash Unlimited. So what are we waiting for? Let's take a gander at some of them. But before we dive in though, I should probably give credit where credit is due. I'm going to link Jon's Game Hut videos down below for you to watch on your own time, as if you haven't seen them already, his channel Game Hut is seriously one of the coolest channels on YouTube as of now, and has shown off some really cool stuff throughout Traveler Tales history, so check out his stuff once you're done watching this video. Oh, okay, enough selling, let's go ahead and take a look at what Jon has for the prototypes. Do you remember when I brought up Bug Run? Well, I actually learned about that through one of Jon's videos. Someone commented on one of his older Twinsanity prototypes that they proclaimed that that exact same prototype was the same one that featured the infamous lost segment. Of course, taking a look into the prototype, there are no bugs to be seen. There's the set and set pieces, but nothing to chase Crash. But why is that? Well, the previously mentioned JMac actually commented on Jon's video to give some insight as to why the bugs never show up, and why Bug Run got canned in the first place. Here's what he put.
The bug run section wasn't just cut because of difficulty, there were some technical issues as well. We had a fairly advanced AI scripting system at TT Oxford for the time. It was a percept-based flowchart scripting system called Agent Lab, which is quite similar to more modern systems found in Unity and the Unreal Engine. Ahead of our time, you might say. This system was great because it enabled non-programmers like me to create object and enemy behaviors in-game, which previously required a proper programmer. The downside of this system was that each enemy used a fair amount of CPU. The bug run section would have required a lot of bugs, each of which would have been running the expensive AI behaviors from the Agent Lab system. This wouldn't have been possible as the CPU cost of so many enemies would have been too much for the CPU to handle. We had plans to code up simpler behaviors for the bug run, which would have let us have loads of creatures. But I think we decided it was too much effort in the end and dropped the whole section. I seem to remember our AI guy was going to make the simple bug behaviors work by using a slightly altered version of the code, which drove the Wumpa Fruit pickups. As far as I remember, the only time we had the bugs working was in a test level I made to test how many of the expensive bugs we could handle in one go. Not enough. In the end, the bugs from the bug run ended up just being used in a couple of places, mostly the boiler room level. They're the little brown cockroachy things. JMac.
Moving on from Bug Run, another prototype disc had an early version of Injin's Battleship, complete with a very different entrance. Take a look for yourself.
It's locked in the ice like this. Let's see if we can sneak past, get a look. Yeah, interesting. And in here there's a puzzle with some physics as well, which I'll show you in a second if I can get up here. Maybe from... oh yeah. Yeah, so if we push this barrel along that's got its fuse lit and back off after a short time of it being moved, it'll explode and break through the hazard. And this is the approach to the battleship, so you don't have the big exterior shot as you did in the final game. And the entire battleship interior really is very, very different. It's almost like a completely different level to the final game. So let's have a playthrough here. There's some health here. And like I said, I've got infinite lives and things, so if you see me not dying...
If you listen carefully, you'll notice the music is very different than the final release of the game. And that's because Spiral Mouth, the band that did the original soundtrack for Crash Twinsanity, came on board. JMac actually composed a few temporary tracks for certain levels, one of which was used for a temporary track for the Cortex fight. Take a listen. This is also something that I wanted to get more information on, but just like Bug Run, JMac once again gives some insight as to specifically why he made this track to begin with.
I made this to try and sneak into the E3 demo of Crash Twinsanity. It was for the NeoKortex Mecha Bandicoot boss fight at the end of the first level that I created. First half is when you find Cortex on his hoverboard. Interval is the total awesome reveal of the Mecha Bandicoot. Then the rest is history. But wasn't actually used though. Bummer.
Like I've mentioned previously, if you want to see more of those prototype builds of Crash Twinsanity, then take a look at Jon's YouTube channel on GameHut. You won't regret it, link in the description. One thing that interests me with Twinsanity is the fact that the entire team hated each other during its development. Remember when I mentioned bickering was one of the reasons why Twinsanity lost focus of its original vision? Well, I wasn't kidding. This has become quite prominent in the Crash community for quite some time now, but I figured I may as well shed some light on it. As from what I've gathered and researched, it would appear that the original Oxford team had constant fights during Twinsanity's development. It's probably the biggest reason why Twinsanity lost focus and fell from grace. Even one of the designers had even gone as far as to say that they all hated each other, but supposedly they only yelled at each other because they wanted to make the game the best it could possibly be. Once again, according to Paul Gardner,
I think that it was very challenging for us to make Twinsanity. It was our first game as a team, and for a lot of us, it was our first game period. Looking back now, I think that most of us feel it was a great experience and have a lot of affection for the game. I wouldn't say that we're happy with it. There's so many things we wanted to do, and so many glitches. But I think we would all agree that it has a really great spirit to it, which I think was the result of the passion and energy the whole team put into Twinsanity. It feels like a handmade Crash Bandicoot game. Even when we were arguing, it was always about how we could make the game better. It feels like it was made with love. Paul Gardner.
So despite the team's constant yelling and bickering and frustration, it was only because they just were really passionate about this project and wanted to put as much love into it as possible, and honestly, that's something that I can commend for. There is so much Lost Twinsanity stuff, dude. There's so much of it. Chances are, I haven't even talked about everything, which that's honestly a 100% guarantee. I think there's more Crash Twinsanity Lost concepts than what there actually is in the final game. And something tells me I'm going to get something wrong, so if I did get a fact wrong, please correct me in the comments down below. If there's one thing that I've learned in my videos, I get shit wrong. It's just inevitable. So again, if I say something incorrect or I point out something that's just not true, please let me know so I can correct it in the comments. Hell, I'll probably pin your comment or something. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I can't believe that Crash Twinsanity has so much lost content and so much lost assets. I feel like if they had an extra year to work on Twinsanity, they probably would have had enough time to finish the game and make a game closer to what they wanted originally. But alas, we got this. But hey, at least there's a cool story to be told within all of it. A huge, warm, special thanks to all of the guests featured in this video. Seeker of the Lost, Scribbles to Screen, LSuperSonicQ, and GabLab. All you guys are fantastic creators, and thank you so much for contributing to the Crash Twinsanity cut content video. It was quite the blast to make, I have to say. But with all that said, guys, I'm Mr.Bones. This was the cut content of Crash Twinsanity, and I'm gonna go take a nap. I'll see you guys on the flip side. Take care.